What a pleasure it is for me to welcome back once again author Shannon Sue Dunlap. I think this is your third time with me, right, Shannon?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you for not getting tired of me.
Oh, that wouldn't be possible. You're writing so many books. I could have you on every 6 months and we'd be golden. We should try to maybe do that because you've got so much coming out. So
Trying.
I'm going to let you talk about it, but we have two specific books we're going to talk about today, two different series. Oh, this is one busy author, I'll tell you guys. She's writing two books a year on top of working full time, on top of caring for aging parents. She just does it all. So let's just jump on. Talk about whichever book you want to start with today, Shannon.
Well, the one that's coming out next month is called Hearts Aweigh. It's the second book in my cruise ship rom-com series. And here, I think I've got it here. I've got
The cover.
the picture with the little
Oh,
hearts coming out. And I was actually really
so
excited today.
cute.
I was at like a bargain store where I found some cute little stress balls that are shaped like hearts that look like
Oh,
this. And so
nice.
that'll be fun to give away to readers sometime in the
Yes.
future.
So
But
so you're rom-com contemporary, obviously. I just got to ask you, have you done any cruising on your own? Have you cruised before?
very little. I feel like I need to do more and write it off on my taxes as
That's a reason right there to do it.
yes, but as you said, I'm partly a caretaker as well. So right now I'm not doing a ton of traveling. I would like to do more cruising in the future, but a few years ago for research, I took one down to Cozumel, Mexico from Galveston. I
Mhm.
live in Texas, and that was really neat being on the big boat and just trying to experience everything. And of course, eating all the different foods and all that kind of thing.
You could easily gain quite a bit of weight on those cruise ships.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
I've done a couple of cruises. Two of them were to Alaska, and one was a
Ooh.
foliage cruise up through,
Oh,
starting up in Nova Scotia and coming all the way down. So that was pretty, but we're not,
yes.
my husband and I are not cruise people. We're more the take your suitcase and walk 6 miles to find your hotel kind of people, but it
Uh,
is fun when you can do it.
mhm.
So I'm sure this is going to date me because when I was young, I watched the Love Boat series. Did you
Oh,
have?
yes.
Okay,
I
good.
know what you mean. I love vintage shows, but I actually didn't watch The Love Boat all that much.
Really? Well,
Hmm.
I had quite a bit of that rom-com thing going on. So as soon as I saw your books, I instantly thought of the Love Boat, especially since you've got these matchmaking things happening on your boat. So tell
Yes.
us, for the first book in this was no, Love Overboard. Love
Yes.
Overboard. And then
Hmm.
they named the series for these books with that same name, Love Overboard. So
Yes.
book two, Hearts Away. Can you tell us a little bit about Hearts Away? Give us a little back cover
Absolutely.
for it.
I introduced my matchmakers in the first book. They're basically four golden girls traveling on a cruise ship full time. They just live on board and they amuse themselves by matchmaking all the young people around them. But in the second book, I take one of those matchmakers and have her estranged son come aboard, trying to get his mother to leave the cruising lifestyle and come back home. He thinks it's ridiculous that she's living on a cruise ship. And so that provides a whole lot of tension, especially when the other matchmakers decide that her son, Spencer, who is a single dad, he really needs a wife and a new mom for his little girl,
Set
too.
himself up for that one, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
How fun. There are people that live on, I did not know this until my last cruise. There are people that live on cruise ships full time. It's actually cheaper for them than to buying a house. And the
Hmm.
food is covered and the room is covered and they have all kinds of activities. I don't think that's such a bad way to live in your.
No, it doesn't sound bad. And
So
I was inspired by a real life person that I had seen, like on a TV news feature. And I believe she was 80 years old living on a cruise ship. And that's what inspired the whole Love Overboard series.
Oh, well, good for you. So I had read previously your Lone Star Sweetheart. That was
Uh-huh.
one of was that book one? I believe
Yes,
it
ma'am.
was book one of your Sweetheart series.
Hmm.
And I loved it. The rom-com is not generally my genre to read, but I was hooked and I couldn't put it down and it was so
Oh,
fun to read. So I
thank you.
cannot wait. And book two is Substitute Sweetheart, and it released in October. It is on Kindle Unlimited. I'm afraid Anchor, the
Hmm.
Overboard books, your cruise books are not on KU. Is that true?
No, no, they're not. Although, they are available for Kindle, but they're not on KU where people can read them, just with their account.
Right. But the Sweetheart series is. So you can start with
Mhm.
that and then you'll be hooked and then you'll want to buy the Kindle of
Yeah.
the other ones. So tell us a little bit about the Sweetheart series because that book came out, the second one. I keep looking at my notes. I apologize.
It's
Substitute
okay.
Heart, book two released in October. And I did read the back cover blurb, and that sounded really interesting. And knowing that you're a teacher and this had to do
Mhm.
with substituting as a principal at a school. So tell us a little about that.
Yes, I drew a lot from my real life for Substitute Sweetheart. And the heroine is a big city New York professor. And she unexpectedly loses her job and gets roped in by her pushy sister-in-law to being the temporary principal there in Sweetheart while the regular principal is on maternity leave. And, she's just like, come on, it's just a few months. And so she decides to stay there and she's dealing with all the culture shock, New York to small town Sweetheart,
Right.
Texas, and then also elementary school versus college professor. And since I work in an elementary school, I had all sorts of fun stories that have happened to me that I could tweak and just put inspiration into the book
Right.
with. For example, the heroine is doing the car line in the morning where they get the children out of the cars. Good
Mhm.
morning, and she accidentally slams her foot into a grate, I think it is, and breaks her toe,
Oh
which
no.
is something unfortunately that happened to me when I
Oh
was doing that. I
no.
fractured a toe, I believe, and
Wow.
so I used that.
Well, that's the best thing. Write what you know, right? Write what you
Hmm.
know. I worked in the school. I was a middle school teacher for years, so I
Oh,
know the whole school
hmm.
drill. And my classroom is right down by the buses, so that was part of the whole,
Yep.
experience, school experience. But that sounds like fun because I can just imagine the comedy that takes place when you're dealing with all those different situations, and
Oh,
being able to
yes.
draw it from your own life is also very, very helpful, I'm sure.
Hmm.
So, how do you juggle writing full time, working full time, and caretaking for your parents? Do you have like an amazing schedule? Do you have hours that you write? How do you work it all out?
I do it with God's help. And when I'm on a deadline and have a book that's due, I'm very good about getting it done. I don't force myself to write at a specific time every day or something, but if I'm on a deadline, I might know, okay, I need to write 1,000 words a day to get this done. But when I'm not on a deadline, like right now, I loosen up more and I might spend more time on my family and on the school. And then summer break is wonderful for writing.
I'm sure. What about all the marketing? Do you do a lot of marketing, social media, and all that kind of
I
stuff?
try. I try to create the interesting stuff for Instagram and Facebook, and it was really cool. The door that got open for me. I'm actually just recently started being I'm not sure what the official title is, social media manager for the American Christian fiction writers.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
all the posts for that, I've been doing that too. And
Oh,
I get
wow.
to teach a workshop at the conference this year on Canva because that's the program I use a lot to do my posts and the ACFW post. So it's been a journey for sure. I didn't even like doing social media. I
Yeah.
felt kind of pushed into like signing up for my Instagram account and all, but it's different when you look at it from the perspective of not, oh, I have to do this to sell books, but that, oh, I can do this to help spread the good news,
Or to connect with
that,
your readers. I mean, your readers you can connect better. That's what I'm trying to get at because I don't even like the idea of selling books. And from everything I've heard from some of the experts is social media does not sell books. It really
yes.
doesn't.
Hmm.
But it does draw people to know you, and that will, if that's what your goal is to sell books, they're going to be more apt to buy a book from you because they know. I have more church ladies, people that aren't even my reading age,
Hmm.
that will buy my book just because they know me and then they've gotten hooked and now they're buying every book and they're asking when the next one comes out. It's because it's relational. And
Yes, it's so
even
true.
you have to be relational with your readers in order for them to buy into you.
Hmm.
That's part of it. So that's a frustrating thing. I keep hearing reels are the thing to do. And I really, if I were young like you are, and I, had that beautiful smile, I probably would be doing reels. But when you get to be my age, the last thing you really want is a camera in your face trying to look cute when you don't feel so cute anymore. So reels are just very uncomfortable for me.
I'm not crazy about them actually either. I try, like when I received my author copies for Hearts Aweigh recently, it's like, okay, I have to post about this, I've got to show the things and all. But I didn't want to be like there with the camera in my face, opening up the box, which I've done before, but I think I just
So what did you do?
got through it.
Yeah, I just feels unnatural. And I think when it feels unnatural, that really relates on the camera too, as well. And it doesn't come across very well. The best reels I do are done outside and when I can do something fun and not my usual stuff, that makes it much easier. But all this to be said, you're still writing a lot. So um, when you said that you're also doing all the social media, just so you know, Canva is like my go-to. I do everything on Canva. I love Canva. I don't know how we ever lived without Canva. But when you do all these things and you're on a deadline for writing and you've got to write 1,000 words and you're teaching, I don't know, with when I was teaching, I didn't get done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had packets of homework to grade. Do you have, because you're a music teacher, I don't want to belittle that by saying, do you have to do homework or do they have homework as music students?
With the music teaching, there isn't as much take home work. I don't have to grade papers usually. Um, I do see like all the kids in the school, usually a lot of them. So I have a lot of kids coming through my classroom. One challenge that I faced last school year, I had changed age groups and I was working with more of the middle school, high school age rather than the elementary. And I was so overwhelmed. That was such a difficult year for me. There was more preparation that had to be done and different things, even though technically I was slated for less hours. That was one of the reasons I took that job. I was going to be a part-time teacher there. But it ended up being so much more work than just doing with the elementary school and everything. And I really leaned a lot on God in that year. He proved to me the verse that says he's the lifter of our heads. That was what he kept doing to me that year, where I'd just like get down and he would lift my head back up again and I'd keep on going, and then it would droop and he'd lift it back up again. Sometimes there's not an easy fix. You just have to
Mm-mm.
keep going. And then I was able, after the school year was over, to go back to the younger children, and it really did lighten the load and help with trying to fit everything else in.
Do you feel there's a big difference in teaching to elementary school as opposed to middle school, high school? Is there a
Most
stress
definitely.
level? So in
And
what way? Like stress level wise, or are the elementary school kids easier? Like I teach Sunday school to little ones, and then I teach Wednesday night with my husband to second through sixth graders, and I love that. But you start getting any older outside of church, church may be a little bit different. It's a whole different culture when you're in a church. But outside of church, you have more, I think, there are more challenges to dealing with kids as they get older. Is that true for you? Do you
yes,
find
most
that true?
definitely. I think it depends on the teacher. I feel like I've heard other teachers say, like, oh, I could never teach the little ones. It all depends on what stresses you out more. With the little ones, you have the he pushed me and crying, and I miss my mommy, and their nose is running. Can you tie my shoe? And then when you're with the older kids, there's more the having to keep an eye on them,
That
watching that
too.
the couples aren't sneaking off together and a whole different set of issues. And so I honestly think it depends on the person. Some teachers would rather deal with that. With me, I missed the little kids. I didn't get as many hugs with the older ones, of course. And coming back to it, it feels like there's more joy working with the younger
Yeah.
ones.
Well, there's so much delight in the way they handle things. I just noticed that in Sunday school, dealing with 4 and 5 year olds is so much different because even though everything's a shiny object and you're trying to teach a lesson on whatever you're trying to teach, we're trying to talk about Jesus and they want to talk about unicorns and
Oh,
and
yes.
whatever or this the boo-boo they got on their knee over the weekend and how their sister pushed them or whatever. It just is like squirrels all over the place that are
Yes.
completely off topic. Or at least with the older kids, if you can get their attention, you can hold it for much longer, and that is a little bit easier. But it's just, Yeah, I think it's a challenge either way, but being young like you are, and I think that helps too. I think the younger you are, the harder it is to deal with older students because you're so much closer to their age that it may be a more difficult place to go.
It made me feel ancient.
Well,
But not knocking the older kids, they definitely had their pluses as well. You could do more advanced things with them. You could sing in harmony and all those different kind of things. So my older students, they had their definite pluses. But with my life and having to fit all the other different things in there, it's easier with the little kids.
so let's get back a little bit to your writing, Shannon. When you are researching for a book, like the Substitute Sweetheart was easy for you, I'm assuming, because you were in that
Mm.
whole thing, and so you could just draw from your own life. And looking for cruise ship stuff, you could get some stuff, and you could watch some things. But do you find research to be very time consuming when you're working on a book?
Depends on what the research is about. My books tend to be very character driven, so I don't spend a whole lot of time on setting details and different things, but I do have to do some. There was a documentary on Netflix about cruise ships, so I watched it and you could learn about the different ways that they pack up all the millions of soda cans or however much it is that puts on it. And it may never appear in the book, but it might just have some sort of interesting,
Uh-huh.
realistic detail I can stick in there. What's more annoying is when I'm trying to figure out, usually my books have like a little twist of mystery in it too.
Mhm.
So if I'm having to research technical details about like what kind of cables are video cables versus audio cables versus all this, then it gets kind of annoying.
Would be a little bit of a downer. Like this series I'm working on now has it's a Norfolk Southern series, so it has the train
Oh,
in the
yes.
background. It has some train details, and a very good friend of ours is how it was inspired by it. His whole life he worked on the railroad, and oh my gosh, he could tell stories from sun up to sundown of all these fascinating stories about the railroad. So when I told him I was doing this, he handed me five huge books on the history of the railroad, which was fine, except I wasn't writing the history of the railroad. I was writing a contemporary book, and he's so sure that it's going to be the history of the railroad somewhere woven in there. But you still have to get, I mean, I think I must have texted him or emailed him 10 different times. I interviewed him and I recorded it so I could get all these little tidbits of information for something that would be in a very small part of a scene. It takes
Yes.
hours of research to make sure you get the right technology, or I'm not sorry, the right terminology. Technology too. Terminology has to be right. I mean, I don't know what they call the thing and why the whistles are different depending on what they're doing. And do they use computers? Do they use this? Do they use that? It's just so much information for a little small, minute part of a book. And then I think
Right.
about people writing historical fiction, and I think, oh, my word, how do they ever? Because I could spend a year just researching before I ever write anything. How do
Yes,
they?
I actually made a mistake in my cruise ship series because I believe in the first book I had the woman who had been married to a career Navy guy
Mhm.
say in her walkie-talkie at one time, Mayday, Mayday. And then when I used that term in the next book, I was researching and I found they always say it three times, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And she would have known that being married to a Navy guy. And I'm like, oh, well, it's too late to go back and fix that in the first book. Oh, well.
You could probably do it on your Kindle though, can't you upload
Well,
again?
I think the publisher would have to do it. They probably wouldn't want to
Oh,
just for that.
I don't know. My publisher, if I found a mistake and I told them where it was, they would go in there and fix it and re-upload. So you never know, they might.
Hmm.
But anyway, there's just so much that you're doing working. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing, which is driving me nuts. I can't hear it, but I can hear it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Anyway, there you have so many things going on, Shannon, and you're writing these two different books at a different time. Do you ever get things mixed up? Or you're working on this book and you're working on that book. Do your characters get stuck in your head sometimes, or you're losing sight of who they are? Do you make mistakes confusing them? I do, but I've got age behind me.
I don't really mix up the characters in the worlds that much. Um, Usually I'm not writing books simultaneously so much. It's like maybe I'll be writing one and then editing another
Right.
that's going through edits, but still I can see how I could get confused with that. But that doesn't necessarily um, get too confused. The characters, do sometimes really feel real to me. It was very cool. Was it just last month or the month before? I found out that my first book in the cruise ship series, Love Overboard, is a finalist for the Selah Awards.
Oh, how exciting.
It was super exciting, tears and everything, of
Oh,
course. But as I'm, thanking God and crying and all this different thing, like a mental picture came in my head of what my four main matchmakers, how they would have reacted, and kind of cheering and applauding for me that I had gotten that kind of recognition. And it just felt so real, because they become so real to you in some ways.
they do. And when you finish a book, don't you find that it's kind of sad because you're putting them away? It's almost like you're saying goodbye to some good friends. And
Mm.
have you ever gone back and flipped through the pages of your book and reacquainted yourself with them and kind of get a little tug on your heart for them?
Uh, Not so much. I guess I just move on to the next project. The book I've started now isn't related at all to the Sweetheart series or the Love Overboard series, and it's actually been a little bit of a relief to be in a new world with new people after having spent several years with the others. Not that I
So
don't like those characters, but just uh, kind of
fresh.
the creative juices flow in a different way because it's a different setting.
Is this going to be a new series?
Probably not. I think this one would be a standalone one, but this isn't contracted with anybody yet. So we'll see if anybody wants to buy this one. It's still
Or
very early on.
you want to give us a little blurb into what you're thinking of this book?
Let me save that one maybe till the next time we talk. It's
Okay.
so early.
Okay.
I've only
Well,
got like a couple chapters. That's it. And um,
so
I
you're
had mentioned
you're you're a plotter or a pantser.
definitely a pantser.
Okay.
I would like to work more plotting into my process, but I also really enjoy the journey and kind of being surprised along the way with the characters. So I don't think I'll ever completely be converted to plotting,
Yeah, I hear.
but I might be able to use a little bit of it more.
I do find because I was a pantser my first time I ever wrote a book and I wrote myself into a really bad corner and then being very new to what I was doing, I had no clue. I was like stuck. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to plot. But when you're plotting everything out, I mean, I think there are certain things you need to hit at certain points in the book, your plot points and your climax or whatever it is in there. But I think if you plot to, for me, if I plot too much, I'm not giving any room for the Holy Spirit to get in there and work his magic.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
I can't write in that way. And I find that if I let the Lord do the work and I type it out as he sees fit, things come to me that I had never expected. Like you, it's a surprise. When you see something happen, it's like all of a sudden, wow, I didn't know that character was going to say that. I didn't know that character was going to show up and twist the book around. And that's the exciting part about being a writer is that when you do it like you're doing it, I would imagine you're on a journey, just like your reader's on a journey when they read it.
It's true.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It is. I love being a writer. I imagine you do too.
I do love being a writer. I'm trying to find some balance, between juggling. I mean, you've got a very full life. I get that. You've got a very full life. I'm slowing. I used to be able to pump out 3,000 pages a day or words a day. And I'm finding that being very difficult now. I'm lucky if I try to get a scene done a day, which is about 1,500 words, and I
Mhm.
try to do it in the morning, which is my most productive time.
Mine too.
Yeah, because we're up at 4 in the morning. And so by 4 in the afternoon, like I'm doing this podcast. And if you see me fumbling along, it's because I've been up for 12 hours and my brain
Right.
shut down about a half an hour ago. But, I need to work in the morning and then do all that other stuff in the afternoon. But then you're trying to find room to serve at your church. You're trying to find room to make sure you're there when your kid, you don't have kids, but I've got two adult kids that are my son especially can tend to be very needy sometimes where he's calling from Japan. So when he calls, it's hard for him to fix the time. So I try not to just ignore the phone call, because it's hard to find that time when we're up at the same time. So it's finding that balance, being able to write. If I could just write and I didn't have to do anything else, I would be in my glory. I'd be in my glory. I just read the memoir, Agatha Christie's memoir or her autobiography. Have you ever heard of it? You're cut out for a minute there. So,
I don't think I've heard of that, but that would be very interesting.
well, it's funny. I had just read a little blurb on her. I don't know if you sometimes look on Facebook and they have this historical information about people that pop up about the life of this person or the life of that person that we may not know. They wrote about Agatha Christie and how her husband walked out on her when she had a very young daughter. I think her daughter was 7 or 8 years old, and her husband had an affair with somebody and left her. He was a very self-centered man. And she ended up writing. She had just started writing before that, but I mean, this is a woman who made tons of money. I want to buy a house, another house. She had 8 houses. I'm going to write up another book so I can buy, like it works that way. I tell people, if you want to make money, don't quit your day job. But she lived in that time where all she did was write. They didn't have social media. The marketing wasn't done by her. I don't even know how they would sell, but she was a million book best-selling author all over the place. So anyway, if I could be an Agatha Christie and just sit around and write all day, it probably would be way more fun. So you're cutting out again. Can I hear? Let me hear you.
My Wi-Fi doing it or
There you
what?
go. Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just cut that part out when we get to it. So I think we're doing well. Shannon, do you have any last words for the listeners here that you can share with us?
Well, since you mentioned my life is so busy and has so much going on, and as I mentioned before, the last school year was so stressful for me. I'd just like to encourage anybody that's listening today that you are going through that same kind of season, just a stressful season where it feels like, is this ever going to end? I know a really meaningful moment for me last year when I was teaching and I was so stressed out. Not only did I have the changing jobs and taking care of my mom and all, but I also had a cancer scare where
Mm,
they thought they saw something. And so I had to go through a biopsy. And thank the Lord, it was not cancer, but there was that piling on too. And I don't know if you remember, but there was the solar eclipse that happened. And they let the kids out of class while the eclipse was happening. And we all went outside and they had the special glasses where they could look up at the sun. And somebody had set up a speaker system outside too. And they were playing the Beatles song, Here Comes the Sun.
oh,
And, the lyrics to the verse, little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. And, the words were just hitting me in that
mm,
moment. And I could just feel the tears starting to well in my eyes as I was staring up at this beautiful feat of nature that God had created. And it felt like he was, confirming to me, like, the sun's still there. You might not be able to see it right now, but soon the sun is coming back out. And so, if there's anybody else that feels that way, I just want to speak from personal experience that, if you just keep going, keep lifting your head, keep looking to God, then the sun will come out again.
well, beautiful. I think that's a wonderful reminder. It got me all welled up here crying too. Thank you, Shannon, for being on here again. I really appreciate it. I'm going to make sure I put all of this information in the show notes so people can get a hold of that book. The Hearts Aweigh, and then again, don't forget to go look for Substitute Sweetheart. It is already out. And then we look forward to your next book coming out as well in October. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and sharing what you've been doing. It's been a pleasure to talk to you again, Shannon. Oh,
It's been
always.
so great to talk to you too. Thank you so much, Jen.
You're welcome. Have a great, great week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.